I was asked this week something that I thought deserved attention on the channel, and that is the question of what do splurge days really mean? What do binges really mean? And should we do them? And that's one of the questions that I continue to get from various people across the world is, should I do a splurge day or shouldn't I? With my type of personality, I'm prone to binging. Should I experiment eating once a day with occasionally going crazy and eating whatever I want? Where's the line to be drawn? Should I eat 2 meals or one, or 2 large meals, or should I do it? What's the difference between that and binging and losing control? And how do I know I'll be able to stop? So these sorts of questions deserve a little bit of attention. First of all, it's important to remember that a splurge day, as I laid it out in my original series of videos in 2015 on this channel, a while ago now, is that they're designed to teach you something. They're designed to teach you that you don't really need them anymore. So whether you tactically eat more one day, or whether you're traveling and you eat out and you don't count calories and you don't care, you just eat and be done with it like you're supposed to, it brings you back to the realization that the occasional splurge doesn't hurt you. Your body is flexible. And I talked in my Cardinal Principles video about how the stone gut theory is a false theory. The stone gut theory is that belief that your gut just will never go down no matter what you do, that once you get fat, you can't get rid of it. A lot of people really believe that. And it happens not to be true. And as time goes by, you see that you get lighter and lighter the longer you eat once a day. So, but instead of learning that lesson, what people do is they start playing with the psychology of splurging, and they turn it into a thing of deserve. They say, I deserve this. So what they do unknowingly is they go back into scarcity mindset. And by the way, that's where all binging comes from. That's where all foraging of bears comes from. It's scarcity. When a bear goes out and starts eating animals and tears into human trash and ends up having to get shot or relocated because they invade a human campsite, it's because of scarcity, because the bear is coping constantly with scarcity, because there's no taquerias or burger joints for them to go to. They have to go and forage. With humans, it's a big difference there, because you have choices. Even a poor person usually has a lot of choices. And unless you have a family, and unless you've recently lost your job and you're just miserable, you don't need to worry about them much for food. So with that being the case, what you have to remember is splurging is never about starvation. You don't need the splurge day. It is only a tool to remind you, tactically so, that you are in control. And once you figure out that you eat as much as you eat after you've been faithful for a period of time, be it a month or so, you start to realize, I never needed that all along. And now you've pushed the magic button and you realize that I don't need that going forward. But if, on the other hand, I do decide to splurge occasionally, which everyone does, you now know that it's not going to kill you. It's not going to stop you from losing weight. You will keep losing weight as long as you stay back, and the very next day you get back on the path. So that's what we've said. But it also serves to tell you sometimes that you're not being honest with yourself. Almost daily, I get emails from people who said, oh, I did 10 days and I fell off the wagon and I started just eating and eating and I couldn't stop. Well, that's because you're not listening to what that tells you about yourself. If you're serious about your goal and you want to stop overeating, all you have to do is be honest with the fact that that's what you want. And if it isn't what you want, you have to be honest with that fact too. This is why people, when they do Biggest Loser competitions at work and they try to lose weight so their spouse will pay them $50, those are horrible motivators, because that's not a genuine desire. And I did a video years ago called Head and Heart Disconnect. When your heart wants something and your head does not, or doesn't believe it can work, it totally throws you off. If you know that you want something bad enough and your intellect also accepts it, you've got a merger and it's going to happen. When you count the cost and you say, I'm willing to get rid of excess and splurging, and you say, I know that I need to, the intellect, you've satisfied the intellect, you satisfied your emotional desires, your goals, your spiritual desires, and you satisfied your intellect, you're going to succeed. But if one is in conflict with the other, then you will necessarily fail. So that's why you have so many people who end up falling off and failing, because they're not 100% on their goal, and they're not looking at what their binges tell them. Their binges tell them there's a conflict somewhere. The same way right now it's about to storm outside because all of this heat is stirring up the cooler patches and causing, we're about to get a big rainstorm here in about a few minutes maybe. Well, the reason for that is because of the temporal volatile exchange of hot and cold. So it's the same thing in your soul, in your mind. When you are at war with yourself, bad things happen. That's why you see these people that they end up, you watch any of these real world police or body cam footage online, you see these poor college kids that are conflicted and they get arrested, they get pulled over, and you see this once nice kid that just gets drunk and becomes a monster. It's because there's a conflict in there. And the same thing in your soul, in a manner of speaking. It doesn't matter how devoted your mind is to changing. You can be as devoted as you can to and intellectually knowing how that sugar isn't good for you to splurge on, to eat 3 times a day. All of that stuff isn't good. You know that intellectually. But if your heart doesn't let go, if you can't stop struggling, then of course you're going to have trouble. And that's what your splurge days teach you. They teach you that, number one, you don't need them, and number two, you need to take a good long look at yourself. Because if that turbulent war is still going on inside you, you're not going to succeed. Remember when I constructed OMAD, I was willing to give all up. I said, look, this is the way it will be. And this entire channel has largely been about that. Started with my story, and now it's many other people's story too. If you're in that spot, you are ready to succeed. But if you're not, you've got to do some evaluating. Do I not care? But here's the kicker. If you say you don't care, why do you still care? Tons of people do this. They say, if this doesn't work, I'm going to go back and accept my fat self. That's something I still hear a lot. They say, I'm going to go accept myself because I'm just fat. Well, that's great. Well, why didn't you do that already? Why didn't you, 6 months or a year ago when you first said that, drop the matter? Why are we talking? And then we discovered that that's not really them. So basically your excesses tell you about yourself. And they tell you about what is not at peace within. And a priest would call that a soul in struggle. Put whatever term on it you want. But that's the crux of the matter. So instead of asking, can I splurge or should I splurge, ask yourself, why am I asking that question? Why, when there's no real need to splurge, are you even asking that question? Sounds like you haven't learned the lesson yet. So if you're on the right path and you go for a meal where you eat too much, or you eat more than you should, or you have 3 or 4 meals that day, or you have a bunch of sugar that day, and then you immediately regret it and you realize, okay, I'm done, I'm full, no harm done, you're going to jump back on, you're going to keep going. But if you don't, if you jump off, then you haven't assessed yourself. Either way, my initial mentioning of the splurge day was a tactical teacher. It's like going out and telling a wayward young man, I think you should go and sleep with all of the women, these loose women that you can find, and I think you should go and find as much alcohol as you can find and just drink. It's like reverse psychology. There's a story in old Chinese writings about a wise man who had a foolish son who was a teenager, basically any teenager, right? And said, oh no, I think you should go out there and find all of the loose women you can find and drink as much as you can. I think you should, go out with all of your friends and eat and drink and just be merry. And of course, the story kind of ends where he realizes with his father's blessing, it's no longer naughty, it's no longer juicy, it's no longer a rebellious departure from the norm. So in a manner of speaking, you can call the splurge day a naughty partner. It's like a loser who gets in a Motel 6 and sleeps with his secretary. He says, I love my wife, but she's not meeting my needs. And so this secretary is willing to perform all of my kinks on me. Well, once you bring the secretary home and introduce her to the wife and say, look, let's make peace. You'd never do that in real life, but you will with food. You stopped, when you found OMAD, you stopped having bad foods. You stopped having the mentality of the dieting mentality, the dieting game, which I've talked so much on this channel about. And once you destroy that mentality, you no longer have the polarization effect of this is good and wicked, but it's naughty, I shouldn't do it, versus this is pure and wholesome, I should do it, but I don't want to. So you see that volatile nature is gone once you embrace truth. Much the same way, when you let go of the ego and the sense of self, right and wrong disappear. There's only liberty. There is no longer law. Very spiritual concept there. So I hope this video has been educational. You guys keep going.